Hello, everyone, and welcome back to American Ultras Talk. Club football is back, and that means our weekly USMNT Stockwatch series returns. We do apologize for this video coming out today instead of yesterday, as it usually comes out on Monday, and for Yuri not being available, but I'm still here to pick 3 players whose stock went up, 3 players whose stock went down, pick the Academy Player of the Week, and give you some players to watch for this coming week of action, all, of course, from the USMNT. So, with that out of the way, let's just get into it with, as you can see by the background, the weekly edition of our Stock Up. It's obviously Christian Pulisic. He's here every single week. It's really incredible what he's been doing for Milan, for the USMNT. He's always getting a goal contribution, and this week was no different, getting the assist on Milan's only goal in their 1-0 win over Udinese. He wasn't as involved later on in the game because Milan did get a red card. Dejani Reinders did get sent off in the first half, but it was a great assist to Chukwueze, very unselfish. He could have easily shot himself, and ultimately it ended up being the difference for a big win for Milan, which got them up back into 4th in the table, just 5 points behind Napoli. They're still definitely in a title race as of now, and of course they play in the Champions League midweek. He's been by far their best player this season. I don't really have to speak about Pulisic much. He's on Stock Up every single week. It's kind of crazy how consistent he's been. This is probably the best form of his career, and hopefully he can keep it up and keep rejuvenating himself under Pochettino for the USMNT as well. Now, on to the more negative note with the first stock down, and it's going to be another Pennsylvania product, Mark McKenzie, the former Union Academy center back, now at Toulouse, and it hasn't exactly been the greatest of starts with him, although I will say he was pretty solid against Panama, winning man of the match over the international break. But returning to Toulouse, played against Angers, one of the worst teams in Liga this past weekend, and he did give away a penalty, unfortunately. Now, luckily for Toulouse, it was saved, so it ended up not costing the team at all, but still not an encouraging sign. It was a really stupid penalty to give away. If you look at it, it was so unavoidable. Nothing was going to happen of the chance. It was kind of just a silly foul. Hopefully he can learn from it. It seems like as good as he plays, it seems like he's prone to one pretty decent sized mistake every game, which is kind of worrying for someone who seems to be in our top 2 center backs. But hopefully he can learn from it and improve his form over the next couple of games, because it hasn't been the greatest of starts to life in France for McKenzie, but I have faith in him to bounce back and at least prove himself as a solid option within that league. Now back to Stock Up, and finally we have some great news on the front of our captain from the World Cup. Tyler Adams is finally back for Bournemouth, made the bench against Arsenal in their great 2-0 underdog win. He didn't see the pitch at all, but I think it's still deserving of a Stock Up because, to have him back after so long is huge for hopefully Bournemouth, but also for the USMNT. And he also gets a Stock Up because his replacements haven't really been doing too well. We all saw what Johnny Cardoso did against Canada. He hasn't been great for the USMNT basically ever, to be honest. Hasn't had that many good chances and has just reestablished himself as a starter at Real Betis. Aidan Morris has had a really good season, but was, I thought, very shaky against Mexico, which was concerning. Tanner Tessman is playing decently for the USMNT. I thought he had an alright camp, but for Lyon, he hasn't really established himself yet. Didn't play a single minute this past weekend. Almost picked him for stock down, actually, because of that. So I think Adams is coming back at a perfect time, getting back into action for Bournemouth and hopefully for the USMNT next window when all of his replacements are kind of in a downward spiral. So hopefully he can get back on the pitch this coming weekend, make his first game for Bournemouth since last March, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, it's great to see our captain back. Hopefully he can provide some much needed leadership in the locker room, because based on last camp, it seems like we're still lacking a little bit in that department. But now on to the second stock down, and this is one I really feel bad for. It's going to be Jordan Pefok. A lot of people I've seen are saying that we should give him a USMNT chance, and especially if Brendan Vasquez is getting call-ups, and I did think he looked pretty solid against Mexico off the bench. Maybe Pefok also deserves a chance, but his form to start the season with Union Berlin hasn't been great. He has 1 assist, but that's the only goal contribution he has, and as a striker who started 4 of the games for Union Berlin. You do expect better, and it kind of just all got worse this past weekend. He came off the bench in the 75th minute and then got subbed off with an injury in the 87th. Not really a way you want your game to go, and it just comes at such an unfortunate time. He's going to be out for a little bit. Nothing too serious, but it could be up to a month, which is not good for his chances, especially since he has underwhelmed for Union Berlin. There's a very real possibility that he doesn't get his starting spot back for a while after he comes back from the injury. So it is going to have to be a stock down for the USMNT striker. Will he be back with the national team at any point? Who knows? The last time he was with us was 2022, but not a good sign for him, unfortunately. But now moving into the third stock up, and it's going to be Diego Luna. Finally, an MLS inclusion. There was actually a couple I could have put here. Caden Clark had a great game. AZ Jackson, Benjamin Kromatsky, Quinn Sullivan, Jack McGlynn. But I'm going to go for Diego Luna because I think he's been probably the best young player in MLS this entire season. Speaking of MLS, by the way, if you want us to put out a video predicting the MLS playoffs, as well as we could also do one for the USL as soon as that's over, please let us know in the comments. We'd be more than happy to do that. We might do it anyway, to be honest, because, I mean, it's our domestic league. We feel like it's probably necessary to cover it as a U.S. soccer channel. But Luna scoring in back-to-back games, getting what ended up being the equalizing goal for Real Salt Lake in a game they eventually won over Vancouver Whitecaps, clinching the 3 seed in the West. He's had just an incredible season. 8 goals, 8 assists within MLS, adding another one in the Open Cup. A huge breakout for him after getting 8 goal contributions last year in his real burst onto the scene. 17 in all competitions for Real Salt Lake this year. It's even more if you count in the MLS secondary assists that they count for whatever reason. Great season for him. Hopefully he ends up winning Young Player of the Year. It might end up going to Diego Gomez from Inter Miami instead, just due to the whole Messi bias thing. Not to say he's been bad, but I think Luna's been a little bit better. Honestly, I think Luna is deserving of a USMNT call-up. Ideally, he's there in November, but at the very least, the Camp Cupcake that we always have in January is supposed to be for young players from MLS. He should be the first name on that roster if that camp does stay, and I anticipate it will. So hopefully he continues his good form into the playoffs, one to keep an eye on as the MLS playoffs do kick off. He's one of the most exciting young talents in the league, American or not. So very well-deserved stock up for him. And then to end it off on a negative note, the last stock down is going to be another young midfielder who missed out on the Olympics. This one was due to his club's choice, although maybe he wouldn't have got selected anyway. It's going to be Rukas Pukstas from Hajduk Split. And I'm just going to have to give him a stock down because he's lost his starting spot. He started basically all of last season for them, scoring 8 goals and kind of a breakout season for him. But this year, he did start the year as a locked-in starter, playing full 90s in almost every match. But truth be told, he didn't really impress. Had a little bit of a disagreement with the manager, Gattuso, and he even got suspended for a game. And now he's back to just coming off the bench. Got 19 minutes this past weekend, 13 the game before that, before the international break. And it's just not really a great sign, to be honest, for a midfielder who finished 28th in the Golden Boy ranking, almost cracking the top 20, which would have meant he was nominated as a finalist. For someone who's rated as highly as that, not just by the US, but around the world, it's just not what you want to see him getting benched. I do think it's probably a bad thing that he didn't get his move to Parma over the summer, and honestly, I think he's probably one of the top priorities in the winter transfer window for getting a move, at least from a USMNT perspective. He's a very talented midfielder with a high ceiling, but we need to get him out of Hajduk Split because his career is kind of stagnating there for the time being. So hopefully he can get back into the starting lineup, but come January, I think it's going to be time to look for a new club because there's nothing much he can really get more out of at Hajduk Split. Now into the players to watch for this coming week, but before we do that, I have to call out the Academy Player of the Week, and this time I'm going to give a shout out to 3 different players because I think all of them are deserving of this award, and I couldn't really pick between the 3. Starting out with a player who actually hasn't been with the U.S. youth national teams, it's going to be Alexander Staff, the 16-year-old striker from Eintracht Frankfurt's youth academy. He's a regular with the German youth national teams, and it's clear to see why. He scores so many goals for fun for Eintracht Frankfurt's U19s, and he was rewarded with his debut as a starter no less. Starting for Eintracht Frankfurt's second team in the Regionalliga, the 4th division of Germany, and apparently he is actually the youngest player ever to play in that division in the Regionalliga, so an incredible achievement for the American-eligible striker. To start on your debut as a 16-year-old for the second team is incredible. Now, he didn't exactly do too much, but that's to be expected when you're playing up so high of a level. It's really encouraging for the future. And speaking of encouraging from the future for players out in Germany, I have to mention Matthias Albert, the former LA Galaxy youth product, moved to Borussia Dortmund over the summer. He's been a standout with the USA U17s and with Dortmund's U17s, earning a call-up to the U19s, starting against Schalke in the River Derby, for the U19s, and scoring, which was an incredible feat. I think he's the second youngest ever scorer for the U19s. And adding on to that, since we did record this a day late, it let me watch him against Real Madrid in the UEFA Youth League earlier today, becoming the second youngest ever Dortmund player to feature for them in that competition. Incredible feat. Also starting that game, he did come off at halftime, but honestly, that's to be preferred. Playing up 4 years and getting back-to-back starts for the U19s is honestly incredible, and it's such an encouraging sign considering he just joined the club in the summer. I'm not sure if he actually knows German. I know he has a French passport and a German passport, but living in the US all his life, I think it's pretty unlikely that he actually knows the language. And considering all that, to graduate from the U17s, which he was already playing up a level as a 15-year-old, to move on from them to the U19s in only about 3 months at a new club, just shows how highly rated he is at the club and how excited we should be for his future. And then finally, the third player who I thought deserved a mention was Neil Pierre, the USA U19 center back from the Philadelphia Union. MLS Next Pro playoffs just started, and he was absolutely immense for Philadelphia Union too. He's been a starter for them all season, one of the youngest players in MLS Next Pro, and playing consistently, especially as a center back. It's really impressive, and considering how tall he is as well, his ability on the ball, his passing was excellent. He got an assist for the only goal in that game to CJ Olney, who, by the way, has also been having an incredible season. He should definitely be in the mix for the USA U20s coming up towards the World Cup. But Neil Pierre was actually fantastic. I think it's the best game I've ever seen him play, and it came at the perfect time in the playoffs, the first round against rivals NYCFC. Keep an eye on him as the MLS Next Pro playoffs progress. And speaking of that as well, we will have a video ranking the top 10 youth prospects from MLS Next Pro once the season is done, so keep an eye out for that as well. Lots of highly rated young talents in the league, so you're not going to want to miss that video. But now moving on to the final part of the video, the players to watch for this coming week. And I'll start with the mainstream one, Weston McKenzie. It has to be. He did miss the game against Lazio for Juventus due to an injury that he picked up in the USMNT camp, but it's looking like, I guess we'll find out basically as soon as this video comes out, but it's looking like he will start against Stuttgart in the Champions League today. So definitely one to look out for there. But even if he doesn't, Juventus also take on Inter Milan over the weekend. So 2 huge games for the club and for Weston McKenzie. For Juventus, so early on in the season, they're 3 points behind Napoli, 1 point behind Inter in the league. That's a battle of second and third. 2 must-win games, to be honest, in the Champions League and in Serie A. And if McKenzie does come back in time, which is expected he will, he's going to play a huge part. He's been one of Juve's best midfielders again, as he was last season. So definitely one to keep an eye on there. And then my sleeper pick to keep an eye on is Paxton Aronson. I think he's a player who should probably be on Pochettino's radar for a USMNT call-up in November. He's been in great form for Utrecht, finally playing back in the midfield in his preferred position as more of an advanced 8. He scored in back-to-back matches leading up to this game, and although he didn't score against Groningen, he got a 1-0 win and played very well, and he's on my player to watch because Utrecht play Feyenoord this coming weekend. It's a huge match. Utrecht are second in the league. They have a game in hand on PSV. They're trying to keep pace with the incredible PSV. We know how good they are with Malik Tillman, Ricardo Pepi, 9 wins out of 9, but Utrecht have 7 wins and 1 draw in 8. If they can beat Feyenoord, who are alongside PSV and Utrecht, the only other undefeated team left in the league, that would be a huge statement of intent on how they mean to go on this season. And if they win that game, they're set up already so early in the year to maybe even get a Champions League spot, and that would be huge for Paxton Aronson, even though he's probably going back to Frankfurt. So those are my 2 players to watch, and with all that done, that's going to be it for the video, guys. Let me know in the comments, who were your stock up and stock downs for this week. You might see I'm wearing a Josh Sargent Norwich jersey. I decided not to include him despite getting that assist. I'll give him a shout out though, because very funny accidental assist, the ball bouncing off his head and then falling straight to his teammate who footed away. But let me know, do you think Josh Sargent deserved to stock up? Do you think there's other players who deserve to stock up? Maybe players who you would have given a stock down, like potentially Tanner Tessman not playing a single minute. There's some others as well. Hashi Wright hasn't had the best start to the season. But let me know who you would have picked. Let me know who you're excited to watch this week, both midweek in the Champions League, the Championship, and of course, over this coming weekend, there's a lot of big games. So let me know. And of course, what are your thoughts on a potential MLS playoff prediction video? I think that would be a fun one. But please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and we'll see you next time.